Assalamu alaikum and good evening. You are listening to Let's Talk, our weekly current affairs show with me, Akeel and my co-host Imtaz on Salaam Radio 106.2 FM and Inspire FM in Luton. You can listen to us online at salamradio.co.uk or watch the show live on our streaming services. Search for Salaam Radio on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. If you prefer mobile, please download and use our Salaam Radio app from the App Store or Google Play. Salaam Radio is always on air 24/7, 365, uniting all communities. Please get involved with your opinions by calling us on 01733 602 133, or you can text and WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Assalamu alaikum.
How you doing?
I feel privileged.
Well, I was just going to say the honour is all mine.
No, not at all. I've got big boots to fill in the absence of Brother Hamid and Muzaffar, but I'm actually very, very happy to be on the show. I can't wait for this show.
Jazakallah. I've been looking forward to it myself as well. Big shout out to Brother Hamid as well. I'm sure he's going to be listening to us somewhere, wherever he is in the world, enjoying himself, probably on a Caribbean beach.
He's always on holidays, isn't he? I can't believe he ever committed to the show in the first place. He's such a busy man.
Yeah. Well, listen, do you know what? We had a stint of 12 months, me and him.
Okay.
And it was great. And, well, listen, the show must go on, as he would say himself.
Sure, absolutely.
Did you have a good week?
I had a long week. I had a long week. Lots going on. Obviously, busy time at work and stuff. But lots going on in the world of current affairs.
Oh, my God.
Lots going on in the news. And, yeah, just trying to keep up with it. And, I mean, how many shows do you have where you don't talk about Donald Trump?
Wow. Do you know,
is this going to be one of the first ones?
No, I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
Do you know what? I used to say to Brother Hamid, do you know what? We need to try and do a show where we don't talk about Donald Trump. But the problem was, he was everywhere. He was like impacting everything around the world.
Yeah.
So he was like, what can we do? So we did try. But somewhere along the lines, he would be there.
Yeah, so a slight offshoot to, I know this is not the main topic of the show, but I don't know if you saw a fake tweet went around. Somebody created a tweet where they claimed to be Donald Trump, and it was from back in 2015, where Donald Trump allegedly said, if the Dow Jones goes down 1,000 points, then the president should be put into a cannon and shot into outer space.
Yeah, that went viral, yeah.
It went viral, and everybody believed it. And then the guy who actually sent the tweet out said, look, this is a fake. I didn't think anybody would believe it. But it just goes to show you how crazy this president is, that somebody could put something ridiculous like that, attribute it to him, and it gets retweeted all around the world because everybody thinks it is actually Donald Trump saying it.
And the thing there as well is the theme with what he has been tweeting since his election actually coincides, doesn't it? You can believe he would write something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Dow Jones is going through the roof. Excellent news. This is all because of my presidency. Top president. I'm the best or something. Yeah, it's just that. Those are the kind of things that he comes out with. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
And then meanwhile, in the rest of the normal world, on February the 6th, and this is the main topic of our show tonight, brothers and sisters and listeners around the world. On February the 6th, the UK celebrated 100 years since the women won the vote won the right to vote in Britain. I mean, it's such an important date. And
so 1918, yeah.
19. I mean, I recall when we started conversing about looking into this show and doing the research, I was completely blown away. Some of the things that have happened from the beginning to where we are now. And then I started thinking about in 2018, really how much has changed, which we will obviously go through as the show goes on.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, if you look at the big noise that's coming out of the institution that is the BBC about gender pay gaps, and things like, equality of women in the workplace and so on. So, yeah, 100 years since they initially won the vote, but there's still a way to go.
Definitely.
I have to tell you though that my children are listening, my daughters, and they're learning about the suffragettes. Well, my eldest has learned about the suffragettes, and she's pro women's rights and everything, and she knows how sexist I am at home, just for jokes. So she's going to keep me in check by making sure she listens and make sure that I don't say anything untoward. Yeah, so...
Well, listen, I want to put this out to our listeners as well. If Brother Imtaz says anything untoward at all, please contact the show, and we will pick him up on that.
I'll try and be good.
But you know what? Let's look back. So in 1832... the first parliamentary reform bill for the first women's suffrage bill presented to the House in the Commons. So it started a long time ago.
Yeah, so that's like early to mid 19th century. And that was, I think, I mean, they had some support in Parliament. There's always been some support in Parliament. The wheels have changed and started to turn.
Yeah.
But it got defeated.
Yeah.
But the key thing was it was actually presented to Parliament. Now, you know, I both know if there's anything that you want major change to happen, doesn't matter what it is, it has to get to an MP. An MP has to bring it up. They've got to try and gain some support. So yeah, 1836, a long, long time ago. And you know, that's what, 80 years before they finally got the right to vote now. That's a long battle.
It is, definitely. I mean, if you look as well, I mean, just staying with the beginning of it, well, in 1881, the Isle of Man granted women the right to vote. And then it went forward. There was a third reform bill in 1884, which was rejected. I mean, and then it goes on and on. Different societies were involved. Different people were elected until it got to 1903 when Emmeline Pankhurst got involved. So, you know, when you look into the history, you realise this was political. They were trying to use political roots and persuasion using MPs at the time, but it was a very, very sexist society at the time. Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about political. I found just ahead of this show, just looking at the research, I found that it was very difficult to look at any meaningful story without a political angle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, that's right.
There's other things that have been going on in the news, and you can talk about climate change, it's political. You can talk about sporting events and which countries host them, it's political. And when you're talking about things like something elementary like, you know, women's rights to vote specifically, that's a very political thing. I mean, women weren't allowed to stand. If women weren't allowed to vote, then getting a woman to stand is almost like selling your ticket, isn't it? Selling your seat. So yeah, it was very, very political for a long, long time. And still is to this day. Yeah,
definitely. But I mean, but it was peaceful. I guess that's what I was trying to say. It was peaceful.
Right.
It's absolutely peaceful. They were using whatever means were necessary politically and peaceful at the time. But it wasn't until, I mean, the thing as well, when I was doing the research, you can't help but feel that it was, in some journalists were quite lazy when they were. Looks like we've got a call, brother. It has to be the Imtaz.
Either that, or it's a sister who wants to talk about suffrage. You know, it's.
Okay, just bear with me a second. I've got someone taking control of my mic. Where are we? Okay, Salaam alaikum, sister.
Salaam alaikum, brother Akeel. Brother Hamid used to do such a fab job of answering my phone calls. Honestly, you kept me waiting.
Hey, wait. Can I just say, in my defence, I had no control over the mouse.
Brother Akeel is not in control of his mouse right now.
Anyway,
I can verify.
How envious I am, and how lucky you are to have what I would say the swoon of Salaam Radio, brother Imtaz. Honestly,
ooh, you got a fan, brother.
So I'm glad we're not live on air because I am blushing right now.
Oh. Well, it's really good to hear you, brother, honestly, on this platform, and I know that you'll have some amazing input.
Thank you, sister.
There are so many topics that I can't help myself when my colleagues obviously sort of host these shows and to put some views forward, especially regarding the suffragettes. And it's been a very emotional time, I think, for a lot of women who are trying to pioneer women's rights even now, as you very rightly said, with regards to big organisations like the BBC. And I just wanted to add...
And the NHS, sister. I mean, you work in the NHS, so you'll know better than most about some of the problems that we have there with gender pay gaps.
Absolutely, we do. And it's indeed very real, it's very apparent, and more work needs to be done. And I encourage young girls, especially like your daughters, Brother Imtaz, are exactly on the right track, and we should be encouraging young girls like your daughters and like others as well to stand up for the rights. And I wanted to say, your daughters are listening, and this was a message especially for all the younger women. I wanted to sort of enlighten them, if you give me permission to do so, on a bit of a historic perspective from an Asian point of view as well, that many British high society feminists voiced concerns for their Indian sisters during the era of the early 1900s, regarding them as passive victims, and their mission was to rescue these perceived objects of pity and misfortune. That's what they were labelled as. And actually, there were by 1905, Asian women were emerging to show public support of various political activities, and the exploitation of women and their traditional roles were then challenged. And two names in particular that come to mind are Sophia Duleep Singh and Bikaji Kama, who became powerful and influential suffragettes, fighting for Asian women and Indian independence as well. And they were both of Asian descent.
Sister,
So
can I just pause you there
Yeah.
just for 1 second? So, Brother Akeel, you've done some research on this.
Yeah.
I've done some research on this. I have to admit, I've not come across any Asian protagonists within this movement.
Absolutely
So
nothing.
this is actually a revelation. It's actually it's quite it's something to be proud of, isn't
Yeah,
it? So,
definitely.
sorry, sister, go on. This is completely
Yeah,
news to us.
It's something to be really proud of. So Sophie Dalit Singh was born in Norfolk. She caught typhoid as a child, and she was a battler even at age 9, and she recovered from fever, but her mum didn't. And Sophie's father left the children in care of foster parents. So she was actually raised by foster parents.
Wow.
And she flourished. She joined an active campaigner. She was a fundraiser for women's rights. She was also a member of the Women's Tax Resistance League, and she made many appearances in courts for non-payment of taxes as well. So that was her. And in terms of Bikaji Kama, she was a prominent suffragette, an ardent socialist. She was actively campaigning for gender equality in Indian independence. So she was born in Bombay, and she was married at the age of 24, and unfortunately that sort of, it didn't really, fall through. Her marriage fell through. And in 1902, she started helping people who were victims of the bubonic plague, and she contracted the disease herself, but she survived.
Wow.
And that's when she travelled to Europe, and she recuperated while she was in London. But she was so strong that she became involved in the suffragette movement, and the strength of the women that she met and their belief in the possibility of change fed her resolve to continue her campaign for an independent India. So there you go. All you young ladies listening out there, that's, a bit of knowledge.
That's what you can possibly achieve. It's interesting you mentioned that she was a hardcore socialist. And the one thing that we were going to bring out on this show and later on in our discussion was the fact that a lot of this movement wasn't actually limited to one political spectrum. It wasn't leftist movement or rightist movement. You found women actually coordinating their efforts and cooperating with people from completely different political spectrums.
That's right.
in order to achieve the aim that was close to the heart of all women.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will openly admit, it's the first time that I saw the movie Suffragette.
It was only released in 2015. I only saw it the other night as well. It was on the TV, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think I probably saw it at the same time you did, and I fell asleep crying, literally. I know that sounds really quite soppy, but
I wasn't crying. I wasn't crying.
I don't believe him. But do you know what, sister? I actually think there would be a lot of people out there who would have been crying as well, because this was a historic achievement. And now you've mentioned these two people, like brother said as well. I mean, I was looking through the women who didn't pay their tax and said, well, there's no tax, no vote, and there's no mention of them whatsoever. So it is very heartening, and I think your message was great. And I hope, especially our younger audience, can take something from this and look at the future that they want to live in. They can build that themselves, especially in the era where we've got women like Carrie Gracie, who worked for the BBC, goes to a Commons committee, sits there and quite literally obliterates them for what they offered. And then they had the audacity to try and give her some back pay when she says it's got nothing to do with the actual money. It's about the principle. So, Absolutely. It's a great message. Sister, thanks very much for your call. And always enjoy your perspective on everything.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you so much. And always remember, there is so much more that can divide us than that which unites us. And this is my message to all my sisters out there. Come on, let's come together, and we should join with each other, obliterating our differences, and we can be a force for the greater good.
Totally concur.
Great words.
Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you, brother.
Welcome, Salaam.
That was great. I mean, I did know what. I'm glad you mentioned that. I did not see a single individual who wasn't British or English or from this country.
Yeah.
And it goes to show you, such a long time ago, you have people in India who were trying to fight for these rights as well. And when you look at India now, I mean, I did some shows with Brother Hamid last year when we were covering all kinds of things happening in the Indian subcontinent. And the last thing that I could imagine ever seeing was something like this.
Yeah, 100 years ago, women fighting for the right for votes.
Yeah, that's right.
When now you've got, the problems they have with women's rights and obviously the abuse of women's rights in that country.
Correct, yeah, absolutely.
But the thing that surprised me a little bit was so I know the sister just came in, Dr. Shabino, who said Asian women were involved. the big thing about this movement was it was a middle class movement for long periods of time.
That's right.
And then it was a recognition that the middle class movement wouldn't be able to recruit as many women as was required to fill Hyde Park for a massive rally of 250,000 women.
Yeah.
And that's when the movement expanded to the working classes and engaged with the working classes, the factory workers and the seamstresses and so on.
Yeah.
And that's when it actually started swelling and becoming a movement that was to be reckoned with by the political elite.
Yeah, that's right. And I totally agree with you. I mean, as you just mentioned there, even when they won their vote, I mean, you're absolutely right. It was the wealthy who could only vote, and they still didn't feel it was enough. Which it takes some guts to do that. I mean, to look at that. I mean, there was even division between them when they first started, from where they were. Then three parties got together. Emily Pankhurst, she was like, well, no, this still isn't enough. I mean, she really was a pioneer. She really, really was a pioneer. I mean, listening to her granddaughter this week on the news, who articulated her views so well. I mean, she was a force to be reckoned with, this woman.
Yeah,
know?
and
when I was listening to her, I'm not gonna lie, I felt like I was like, I wish I was around in her time, watching this actually happen, unfold.
yeah, I mean, if you take sometimes you look at great black leaders like Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
or we mentioned earlier, didn't we, Nelson Mandela,
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. Yeah, so these people, you can kind of straight away you attach yourself to them because you're like, oh my God, look, he was black, he was living in that time, and look what he did.
Yeah.
But take away the fact that he was black and the limited time that he was actually a great leader.
Yeah.
MLK was.
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela was. So I'd say the same thing with Emmeline Pankhurst, and that take away the fact that she was a woman, because
Yeah.
this is one of our prejudices, isn't it?
Correct.
Even if she wasn't a woman, if you just judge her on the basis of what does a leader do, does a leader inspire his or her followers? Does a leader have a clear, consistent message? Does a leader end up getting results in what they want to do? Then all those boxes were ticked, and Emmeline Pankhurst certainly achieved that, or went some way towards achieving that.
So tell me something, brother. How do you feel then, in light of everything that's been uncovered and through our research, and quite rightly we should be remembering the achievements, great achievements of the
celebrating them,
and celebrating them. How do you feel about the government saying, well, we're going to be looking into pardoning them and some of the actions? It's uncomfortable to me. I'll tell you why.
Go on.
See, the women at the time, when they were involved in some of the things they did, this was a battle. Okay, they weren't unwitting victims. They chose to do the things they did. I mean, to that end, there were. I mean, to look into some of the articles I looked at. For example, if the woman was imprisoned, she received a badge in the shape of a prison gates. As they were like war wounded. And
medals. Yeah.
Absolutely, and if they were, we got another caller. I don't know if I'm going to have access to a mouse. Let's find out in a second. Assalamu alaikum. You're live on Salaam Radio. Can I take your name, please?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. It's Zain here, Zain Awan. I'd just like to firstly say that it's a really, really interesting discussion you guys are having today, and it's always good to hear Brother Imtaz's voice as well.
Uncle Imtaz to you, Zain, please.
Uncle.
Respect your elders, please.
Uncle Imtaz. No, I think what's really interesting about this discussion around the suffragettes and women's voices, firstly, I applaud two men just having this discussion as well. And I think, historically speaking, Islam has a long history, and actually not something which is seen in the modern era, but Islam in itself was quite radical in its approach to empowering and actually changing the structures of society.
That's the first thing I said to my daughter when we were watching the film, and I said, "You find this incredible? This was 100 years ago, and we were here 1400 years ago." And it's kind of like she just rolled her eyes at me, like children do, you do to me sometimes. But she rolled her eyes like, "Oh, here we go, Dad, with another lecture." But you're absolutely right, Zain. This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted to Muslims back when Islam was first delivered to us.
And most definitely, like when I was at university and we were studying elements of radical feminism, you study that, and if you look at the theory beyond the practice, and you see what radical feminism actually is, it's changing the structures of society which disadvantage gender, basically the women at large, and changing the whole fabric of society to make sure that men and women are on the equal level. Now, if you look at even Quranic scripture, it refers to mu'mineen and mu'minat. referring to men and women, the believing men and women. You have the whole idea that even during the time of the Prophet, you look at the relationship between Sayyidah Khadija, peace and blessings be upon her, and the Prophet, and actually being a strong businesswoman.
Yeah. Exactly. Then, I was going to say, like, property rights and inheritance rights.
And even if you look at that idea that in the time of Jahiliyyah, they used to bury their daughters alive, and for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to say that that your daughters are a mercy upon you, to even change that whole tradition of burying your daughters alive. I know it sounds very ludicrous, but that's changing the very fabric of society. And it's actually very interesting, because time and time again, I think we sort of like vacate. We feel like Islam doesn't have that space, or using that word feminism. What's happened is, I think it's been distorted and appropriated by different factions.
It's been hijacked, hasn't it? It's been hijacked.
Yeah, and if we as Muslims were to actually reclaim that term and say, actually, no, this is how it was done, and look how Islam has approached this whole idea, and look at it as a theory as opposed to the practice today, which we see by those that so cool, like they call themselves feminists, but in doing so, remove the agency of a lot of women who want to practice their faith, and etc. So I think the question I would like to ask you guys as well for a discussion point is that, despite Islam having this long history of women being actually at the forefront as well and being equal to men, where do you feel we as a British Muslim community are going wrong in including women, and what are the barriers that, firstly, we as men can sort of alleviate to ensure that women are participating within our centres, but also have a direct say and are leading also alongside the men?
Great
Excellent.
question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's definitely something that we're going to go on to later on in the show. So thanks for that. We will respond to that, maybe not, but just before, has he gone?
No, he's gone. He's cut off.
Zain, are you there? Oh, okay. I was going to throw a question back to him. He's probably just dropped his question and left. That's a shame. Zain, if you are listening, what I was going to ask Zain, and maybe we can have a discussion around this as well, was, there was enrollments of women in the army, and this was around the suffrage movement as well, because women got involved in the war effort around World War I, and that was one of the things that obviously sped up the whole rights for women to vote. But we've got stories in the Hadith that say, women were part of the travelling armies that went out. And there's a very famous Hadith of I forget the name of the lady who threw herself on top of the Prophet to protect him and took 4 or 5 arrows, and was a martyr and protecting the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we've got this thing so historic, and yet Zain asks a very, very good question in that.
Fantastic question.
What is it about, British Muslim women particularly? I mean, that's what we've got most experience to, obviously, in terms of Muslim women, but British Muslim, they do feel like it's either you're going to be a Muslim or you're going to be a feminist. And it's almost like they're two completely different things. But I'd argue, well, actually, no. To be a Muslim, you're automatically a feminist, because you've automatically given yourselves and demanded for yourselves the rights that I think feminists try and fight for in Western society. What do you think?
For me, I think one of the problems you have as a British Muslim female definitely is culture. I think culture is a big issue here. We have mindsets. I mean, at the moment, third, I'm not quite sure, 4th generation now in the UK. And you still have a lot of people, a lot of parents who still have that cultural, outside of the UK influences of how you should behave. And
so back home, Pakistan, India.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and, the sub-Indian continent. And I think what happened is, because the parents have that, now what I deem to be a distorted view of the world, and because yourself, you learn your culture, your religion at home at the beginning, those ideas are reinforced to you, and they're just passed on generation to generation. It's only now, when we're getting to a stage in 2018, where me and you are sitting here across the table, and you're telling me that your daughter's listening to the show, and she
she's going to keep you in check, yeah.
Not just that, but
it's a daily conversation.
You've exposed her to things like this. Yeah. But culturally, you have a situation where parents are not doing the same. So what happens then is you have a situation where people don't feel comfortable going to a mosque or so on and so forth, or the mosque themselves don't have the facilities that will make them feel like they are part of the equation.
So that sounds very structural, doesn't it? In terms of the whole construct of British Muslim life. Yeah. It sounds very, very structural. Interesting what you say about my daughters. Not a day goes by that we don't have a conversation where something triggers in the back of my mind thinking, oh, this is almost borderline. Yeah. And it shouldn't, because everything should be on the table, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So those kinds of things where you're trying to empower young Muslim women to be, because I don't want my daughters to grow up to be housewives and nothing else, and just inside a little box, and they've got their own. I want them to be actual, leaders and thinkers and speakers, and that's what I want for them, because that's the way you're going to change the structure, and that's the way that you're going to change. So that's certainly
and break down barriers. Absolutely, and I think that is my view on it. Really, I think it's gonna And until we, as parents of our generation now, anyone in our generation, until we educate these young minds and empower them to take a grip of their future,
Sure.
that's the only way they're going to pass this baton on. So the legacy, in my point of view, from a suffragette's point of view, in an Islamic way, is that's fine, all this has happened, until we pass that baton and allow them to grow, allow them to see the change, be that change.
Sure.
It's just not going to happen, which is sad. We've been talking about this 2018. We're seeing this happening. We've got brothers like Zayn really articulating themselves really well. And, all these things are happening around us, yet we still have this thing where culturally we're like, well, you shouldn't be. We're heading towards a break, actually. So please stay tuned. We're going to continue doing this when we turn back. Jazakallah khair.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Sadly, millions of orphans living in the poorest countries lack the necessary support for a healthy childhood. These children have to endure lives of hardship without the basic necessities that will help them to grow, to learn, to live. Let's show them that we do care. Let's brighten up their future. Call 0161 225 0225 or visit humanappeal.org.uk.
Are you looking for a fun-loving and professional nursery? Then call Bright Bambini Montessori on Peterborough 306565. Teaching EYFS curriculum and Ofsted approved. We also offer Forest School and Arabic. Limited free funded places available. Call 01733 306565 or email info@bbmc.uk. Bright Bambini Montessori.
Need a great place to chill out? Look no further than The Lounge for quality food and drinks at a great price. Try our varied menu: pasta, seafood, burgers, grills, salad, soup, rice and sides. Also hot and cold drinks, milkshakes and mocktails. Leave room for our exquisite desserts. The Lounge, 417 Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call 01733 709 306 to order for delivery. The Lounge, friendly service with a great atmosphere.
Need car parts quickly and at a great price? City Auto Parts offer competitive prices, trade accounts and a delivery service in and around Peterborough. For all your parts and accessories requirements, visit City Auto Parts, 30 Fitzwilliam Street, Peterborough, PE1 2RX. Call us on 01733 347711 or visit www.cityautoparts.co.uk.
Do you have lots of clutter at home or in the office that needs to be kept but nowhere to keep it? Ivet Self-Storage offers a secure, affordable, clean and dry home for your belongings. We have security systems in place which are monitored 24 hours a day, ensuring that your items are safe. With a simple monthly payment, Ivet Self-Storage provides secure and tailored facilities to meet your specific requirements, whether short or long term. We offer the best prices and longest opening hours in Peterborough. For more information, please call on 01733 306 456 or visit us at Ivet Way, Westwood.
عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: كل سلامة من الناس عليه صدقة، كل يوم تطلع فيه الشمس تعدل بين اثنين صدقة، وتعين الرجل في دابته فتحمله عليها أو ترفع له عليها متاعه صدقة، والكلمة الطيبة صدقة، وبكل خطوة تمشيها إلى الصلاة صدقة وتميط الأذى عن الطريق صدقة.
Who is the loved one? Who is Ar-Rahman?
Peterborough's community radio station, Salaam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Let's Talk on Salaam Radio 106.2 FM and Inspire FM in Luton. I'm still here with my co-host Imtaz Ali. We've been talking about the suffragettes this evening. Really would like to get some more comments and calls. We have some great calls already in the show so far. You can call us on 01733 602 133, or you can text WhatsApp the show on 07745 278 978. It's a very pertinent, poignant subject, especially 6th of February when we were celebrating the 100 year anniversary of the right for women to vote in Britain. So where were we, bro?
Well, just before we pick up again, I think it's worth reading some of the texts that we've had on Facebook. Brother Amir Suleiman has text saying, Brother Akeel looks emotional without Brother Hamid. Brother, I don't know how to take that. I mean, are you missing Brother Hamid? I mean, we of course we miss Brother Hamid all the time. Yeah.
Definitely.
So apparently you've been looking a little bit emotional on the radio. And Sister Shabina, she's followed up her call by saying the suffragettes such as Hazrat Zainab, women that pioneered the voice for Islam, which is in response to the question that Zain raised around Islam being a pioneering force in terms of women's rights and how we've got it so wrong, 1400, 1500 years later. So let's pick up a little bit again on where we're going wrong as British Muslims and how we can try and rectify that, and then just go back to the suffragette movement or the suffragist movement, which is what it was called first before it became a little bit militant.
That's right.
And we'll talk about the militancy as well, because that's interesting.
I recall at the time, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, when it became Pankhurst actually owned suffragettes, the name once. It was using the derogatory term from the Daily Mail, if I recall correctly.
Absolutely. So the suffragists became a little bit more militant.
Yeah.
They founded the Women's Social and Political Union, the WSPU, which was the Pankhurst's baby. It's Emmeline Pankhurst and her 3 daughters. And that's where they coined the phrase deeds not words, which is, I think, takes quite a lot of prominence in the movie Suffragettes.
Definitely.
So let's not talk about it. Let's start doing stuff. And by deeds, they were initially started off throwing stones at shop windows and causing public damage. They were chaining themselves to railings of public buildings. They were committing arson attacks. They wrote articles about how to commit arson attacks to be most effective. And there's a scene in the movie which I'm not 100% sure if it's actually depicting a real life operation, but there was a scene in the movie which I found very entertaining and very interesting, in that they targeted the telecommunications of the capital by blowing up post boxes, so throwing bombs in post boxes and cutting telephone cables. And that's like, well, you're going to disable a city for a day, every time you do that, and they're doing it randomly. So that whole political nature, that whole militant nature of the movement differentiate it from the suffragists.
Yeah.
And like you say quite correctly, that the Daily Mail almost accidentally coined the phrase suffragettes.
That's right.
And they were trying to take the mickey, but really it stuck. And then you knew you were either a suffragist or a suffragette, depending on how strongly you felt and how militant you wanted to be in your fight towards equal rights.
That's right. I mean, another example I'll give you as well. Some of the things that they did in the militancy was when the government held a census in 1911, hundreds of women defied the law and refused to take part. I mean, either refusing to provide information or joining one of the packs of women who roamed the streets on the night in order to avoid so that they couldn't be counted as part of the census.
Wow.
But what was really cool, I found, was Emily Wilding Davidson famously hid in a broom cupboard in Parliament so that she could give her address as the House of Commons.
That's
brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. But when I asked you earlier on before as well, I don't think they should get a pardon. I think that would be a disservice. It would be a disservice to what they went through. And I don't think actually they would want to receive a pardon because they went through the struggle.
Oh, I see your point. Okay, that's very interesting. So initially I was thinking, why is Akeel being a little bit stuck up about not pardoning these women who did something for the right reason? But you make perfect sense. When they were coming out of jail, they were getting a medal for having spent time in jail for the movement. So they were proud of their militancy. They were proud of their rebellion against society. So pardoning them now almost removes them from the list of notorious individuals.
That's right. They fought for equality. I mean, you mentioned about deeds, not words. Pardon from today's government for the actions of a long dead men is the epitome of words, not deeds.
Wow. You're going to quote that? Who's that from?
This is from an article I found in the New Statesman.
Excellent.
And that was, out of all the research I did, I thought, that is it. That's the one. So I think it will be a discredit. I think they would be thinking, if they were alive right now, or if they were watching us right now, they'd be thinking, no, we don't want that. Because that is the opposite of what we did. We didn't do that. I mean, famously, one of them who jumped out in front of one of the king's horses, she was trampled and she died. I mean, she was
horrific, yeah.
And she was highly educated. I've forgotten her name now. She was highly educated at Oxford. She was very, very involved with everything that they did. But these women were prepared to die just for the right, and I think it would diminish absolutely everything they stood for. Right now, people can take their hat off and say it's great what they did, but the struggle was real then, and it should be recognised for what it is. Although we use terms like militancy, which is quite right and appropriate for some of the things they did.
Absolutely, yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is, but at the same time, from everything that I've learned about them, they were amazing, they were pioneers, and they have left a legacy, and not a militant legacy for anyone who's listening to me right now, but they've paved the way for all the women around the world, but especially the United Kingdom, which was at the forefront when it came to this. A lot of the world didn't allow their women to vote. Now, I'll tell you where I'm bringing this. Last year, 2017, Saudi Arabia allowed women to drive. 100 years ago, Britain allowed women to vote. That's the difference.
Yeah, and in the credits of the film Suffragette, there's a list of countries and the year in which they gave women the right to vote. And the film was produced in 2015. And in the credits, it did say Saudi Arabia is now considering whether or not they're going to take it to Parliament, whether or not women get the right to vote. And Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, is identified as, the perfect, the model Muslim country. This is what Islam looks like. As far as non-Muslims are concerned, we know better.
Correct.
But when people say, Muslims, they don't let their women drive because look at Saudi Arabia. That's a Muslim country. That's where Mecca is. That must be a Muslim country. So it's disheartening. It's really upsetting, actually, that is a situation in what you would class as being, the center of Islam in terms of the birth of Islam and where the Holy Mosque is and so on.
I agree with you. And this is the unfortunate world that we're living in. It goes back to what Zayn said as well. I mean, if you, like you just mentioned this there, you're looking at Saudi Arabia as a conservative, in fact, you could say quite a lot of the Middle East, but especially Saudi Arabia as a very, very ultra-conservative society.
Yes.
And so where does that leave British Muslim women? I think now is the perfect opportunity to get involved in your mosques, but I think it's incumbent now on the mosques, the chairmen, the committees to have their voices.
How do you feel about this discussion being had by two men?
I think it's great. I think 2018.
Do you think this is a good thing?
I think this is.
So why have we not? I mean, I'm not pointing the finger at myself or yourself, but why have we not got a sister in here talking about what women's right means for her? I mean, that would have been. We had obviously Dr. Shabina calling in. It would be great if we got a call in from another sister who wants to talk about how feminism and modern day Islam for a British Muslim coexist, because you can't. I don't think you can be a Muslim woman and not be a feminist. That's my view, and certainly I see that in my daughters.
What do you think, listeners? I mean, it's a strong statement there by brother Imtaz. You can call the studio on 01733 602 133. I happen to agree with him. I think there's a lot of misconception in Islam.
Yes,
and especially when it comes to women. And you know what? Most of it is on the part of men.
Yeah, we propagate some of these.
We do, don't we? And I go back to, I keep harkening back to, it's cultural. It's not Islamic, it's cultural. So we like you mentioned earlier on about, housewives and things like that. And, it's still that mindset. Oh, well, when you get older, you don't need to educate, you'll get married. That's not what it's about.
Oh, I mean, Pakistan has had a female prime minister. Bangladesh has had multiple members of parliament.
And currently,
and then you've got Malaysian MPs throughout the last 10-15 years, multiple women in that. There's a lot of Muslim countries that show excellent examples of women being equal. Just going back to the whole, I mean, I know this is about suffragettes and not about Islam, but we have to know our own history to be able to appreciate, current modern British history.
Yeah.
And our own history is, property rights were given to women, inheritance rights were given to women at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what, the elevation of women's rights at that time when Zain quite rightly pointed out, girl babies were being buried.
That's
children.
right.
They were just being buried at birth because it was like, oh, who wants a girl? We want a boy. So know your own history, but at the same time, take nothing away from the suffragette movement in the British UK. I wanted to talk a little bit about the suffering that they encountered, because I'm sure you studied this at school, the suffragettes. Yeah. I did as well. But it never struck a chord with me at school, not because I wasn't paying attention, because I was, but it just, I think they water it down a little bit. I think they don't actually tell you how bad it was. So women are chaining themselves to public buildings in protest, and they're being molested by the police and by passers-by. Men are using that as an opportunity to sexually abuse them when they're, causing a scene, as they were, or being silly. I think they were quoted as saying being silly. Women are protesting and they're being attacked by police, and the media is reporting it as they're bringing it upon themselves.
Yeah.
Women are protesting for the right to vote, and they're doing it legally, because the right to demonstrate has always been there, legally and peacefully on the streets, and the police are just attacking them with batons and just beating them to the ground.
Disgraceful.
You know how politically incorrect it is now to hit a woman, and this is 100 years ago where you're supposed to be gentlemen and all this, and so all that was going on. And then the biggest thing for me, and I'm sure you came across this as well, the biggest thing for me was how the WSPU, they said if you get arrested, don't eat. This is your struggle, this is your demonstration. So they went on hunger strikes, and initially they went on hunger strikes, and they were being made, they were being force fed.
That's right, brutally force fed. Now,
do you want to talk a little bit about the force feeding and how that actually? Because unless you can imagine what it was, you can't appreciate the pain that they went through. I mean, their jaws were being prized open, held open by some kind of mechanical instrument, and then tubes were forced down their throats. And then they would just pour in some porridge or some milk or whatever it is straight into their stomachs. And it was only after having suffered that, and they came out from prison, and they wrote about it in their newspaper, The Suffragette, which had 20,000 circulation, I think, around that time, that people started saying, that's actually quite barbaric. These are, prissy little precious women, and they're being treated like this, and they got more sympathy as a result, didn't they?
That's right.
So these kinds of struggles, I think these kinds of struggles, we have to accept that they took place. Only then can we actually understand some of the sacrifices that they made. But also, society and the lawmakers. And we mentioned a little bit about this off air. Was the cat and mouse? There was something called the cat and mouse ploy, or the cat and mouse act. It was nicknamed the cat and mouse act, where the lawmakers and the police, they were getting such bad press from force feeding them. What they did was they kept them inside until their health got so bad that they were close to death, and then they released them. So they would go back and be able to eat, obviously, because they're going to eat when they're free, they can eat.
Yeah.
And once they've eaten and they've replenished their energy and they've recovered from their so-called illness, they'd be arrested again. So we'll just arrest you, keep you in for 3-4 days until you're close to death, but we don't want you dying on our watch. Yeah. So we'll release you, let you feed up, get your energy back, and then in a week later we'll pick you up again.
It's just torture.
It was torture, and it was just, look at the systematic and structural setup in which, society was using to keep these women down when they were asking for equivalent rights to men.
That's right. And it's a sad state of affairs that we're in 2018, and we have, last year especially, when we've had all these scandals and all these news breaks about the Me Too movement, all these things and so on and so forth. All these things have come out from the woodwork, and it's, and even in Parliament, I'd say, only in the last 10 years or so where you've seen a real a proactive approach by the governments to have more female MPs in government. I mean, even now, it's not really a 50-50 split, is it?
Well, Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister, and I remember back in the day when she became Prime Minister, and it was like, oh my God, this is going to open up the floodgates.
That's right.
But since Margaret Thatcher, okay, I know we've got Theresa May now, but how many strong, powerful front bench women can you remember, or can you name? There's not been many. So yes, there was a breakthrough with Margaret Thatcher becoming Prime Minister, but after that, they've still lagged behind. There's things going on in politics which are always a little bit controversial. The all-women shortlist for different seats and different elections, and I know we had one for Peterborough as well. Our current MP Fiona Adesanya was on an all-women shortlist, and she'd have probably got selected even if it wasn't an all-women shortlist. That's beside the point. The point is, you need policies like that to bring forward, get equal representation from both sexes. And I'd say similarly, for people from ethnic minorities and so on. It's all about the whole diversity and inclusion thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, I agree with you. I know we're getting close to the end of the show. I know both of us would like to cover this for longer. It's a really, really important topic. I urge anyone listening to our show to look and do their own research and see what this amazing movement and what these individuals did on their own, but as well as a team. And it just goes to show you, when you have an idea, you have a goal, and you want to achieve something, especially on this scale, it is possible. And definitely,
absolutely.
And me and Brother Imtaz will say we probably haven't done it justice, but Jazakallah khair for everybody who's taken part in this discussion. But we're going to talk over to our second topic now, and it was a really, really interesting story. And
I love this story.
And do you know what? Twitter was in absolute meltdown.
Really?
It was trending all over the world, and I was like, wow, okay, what's going on? So we're talking about Cheddar Man.
Cheddar Man, brilliant.
The first modern Briton. He had dark to black skin. Cheddar Man, as he's now known. DNA analysis reveals. I can tell you right now, the far right certainly had a bad day when the news came out with this one.
I don't think they just called it fake news, didn't they?
Yeah.
It was just fake news. So Cheddar Man, yeah. So Cheddar Man is the one of the earliest Britain's fossils found near a place called Cheddar in Somerset, hence the name Cheddar Man. So this is interesting. I didn't know much about the history of the habitation of the British Isles up until Cheddar Man came out, and then I've done a bit of reading behind it better. But people used to come to the British Isles, and then an ice age would hit, and it'd get a little bit too cold, and they'd disappear.
They'd disappear, yeah.
And then they'd come back, and then they'd disappear.
That's right.
And it was only until they started to get a little bit better with their farming methods and their fishing methods and so on, the technology advances, that allowed them to habitat on the British Isles.
That's right.
And survive the cold winters, and that was 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So the very first permanent settler, or the last permanent settlement, came about from this one fella who's now referred to as Cheddar Man, and it was only recently. So everybody thought that the British Isles was always populated by white-skinned or fair-skinned, fair-haired people, and that kind of fits the narrative of we, the indigenous British people, go back to where you came from. It really does.
It does, of course it does.
It really does.
Yeah.
But I mean, you must have smiled when you saw Cheddar Man. A picture of Cheddar Man, the earliest Briton, and let's make no bones about it.
It was a victory.
He was black. He was black.
Yeah, he was black.
The brother was black.
Yeah.
So can we just say and he had blue eyes. So he had blue eyes. So that's where the slightly different eye color and so on. But he had dark curly hair and dark brown stroke black skin. How does that fit with the narrative? How does that?
Well, I mean, to go on to that, as we're talking about this as well, Tom Booth, the archaeologist at the Natural History Museum who worked on the project, said, and I quote, "It really shows up that these imaginary racial categories that we have are really very modern constructions or very recent constructions that really are not applicable to the past at all."
So I love that you quoted that, because this professor, he says very modern, and then he says very recent.
Yeah.
Because modern, the word, has got some positive connotations to it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so backward, I'm so modern.
Yeah.
So it's like a good thing. And he's like, this is a very modern, and then he's like, no, it's a very recent, i.e., it's not so much a positive thing. It's something that's happened recently.
That's right.
But it's not modern to be, to be having these kinds of prejudices. You're absolutely right. It really does make you question the whole issue of race, because if you've got dark-skinned ancestors, and your skin has only lightened up because of a lack of vitamin D, because you've started farming and you've stopped eating fish. I think that's what it is, isn't it? They started farming, they started tilling the land, so they stopped getting the vitamin D from the fish. There's a lack of all-day sunlight. Obviously, in Britain, we know we don't get a lot of sunshine, and it's because of that your face gets paler and paler over the years, so as to absorb more vitamin D from the sunshine, and that's all it is. So, yeah, I mean, how do the EDL feel? How do?
Well, I'll tell you how they feel. Here's a stat for you.
Go on.
About 10% of the white British ancestry can be linked to this ancient population.
Yeah.
10%, and do you know what? We're not even 5% of the UK population. That's Muslims. It's just, if I was a member of the EDL right now, I would be thinking to myself, or Britain First and so on and so forth, I'd be thinking to myself, right, we need to revise some of our policies and our literature.
But do you think Cheddar Man should be called Tommy Robinson? because he was in Britain first. Yeah. He was in Britain first.
Well, that's brilliant. I love that. Absolutely. All I can say is, I mean, I wasn't expecting this. It's a great story, and I think it just goes to show you as well, doesn't it, that we often in social media, and especially in the climate that we live in, just like the tweet you mentioned at the top of the show, as soon as somebody which might have a blue tick on Twitter, for example, you will see a tweet think, oh, well, that's got to be real. So we're so lazy, we won't even do any of our own research. So we'll just believe what was put before us. But now having this DNA being tested and the research being done, now, believe it or not, there's actually people still saying, well, this isn't true. This cannot be true. Because there's been so much division ever since Brexit has happened. Where people just don't, people are comfortable in whatever they want to believe in, and therefore whatever you say, doesn't matter what you show, doesn't matter about the DNA, we're going to believe whatever we're going to believe.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Brexit. The one of the recurring themes in the lead up to the referendum was pro-Brexiteers saying we're fed up of the experts. We're fed up of listening to the experts, i.e. you might have a master's or a PhD in economics. You might be like working for the Bank of England, and you might be Mike Kearney or whatever it is, yeah? But we're fed up of listening to the experts. We just want to do what our gut tells us.
Yeah,
and this is a little bit similar in that, do you know what? You've done this genome analysis, DNA, molecules, chromosomes. I know I did this in GCSE science, but it means nothing to me. I don't want to believe it. I'm white, therefore my dad's white, therefore my granddad's white. But it's just one of those things.
I call it the Alf Garnett syndrome.
The Alf Garnett syndrome. Do you want to educate some of our younger viewers on who Alf Garnett is? He was an absolute legend in my house. My dad used to love him, by the way.
Yeah, well, do you know what? He was a West Ham fan, wasn't he?
Yes,
he was a West Ham fan. If any of our listeners don't know, Brother Imtaz is part of Salaam Sports as well, so there's that on Sundays. But yeah, you're absolutely right with that. I mean, I tell you what, it'll be interesting to see what happens from this development and how people may change their perceptions. Obviously, people leaning to the left and in the middle, they're going to accept it. People on the right are just going to carry on and posting and believing whatever they may believe in. But it was a great story. We're heading towards the end of the show very soon. I have to say, bro, it's gone really, really fast for me, and hopefully I hope you've enjoyed it.
Oh no, it's been great. What is the program though? Brother Hamid is on a sabbatical, so he's off for a few weeks. He's on a
sabbatical.
And Brother Muzaffar, where is he?
He's in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so how long is he away for?
I believe he's away. I think he'll be joining us in March.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to put you on the spot now and say, how do you think Brother Muzaffar would react to the story of Cheddar Man?
Oh my God! I think
I'd love to hear it.
React with absolute glee.
Yeah,
just like the rest of us. To be fair to him, he would be like.
Hang on. Why do we enjoy it so much?
I'll tell you why. Because we've grown up in a society where you're made to feel like the outsider. Okay. So I often say this to Brother Hamid as well. If you go to where our parents are from, Pakistan, you go there, they make you feel like the outsider.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh well, you're British, and then you come back home to the UK where we live and we're born and we raise our family and the mother tongue's English, so on and so forth. We're made to feel like the outsider. So it was almost as if somebody's just scored a goal for us that we didn't know he was on our team. Yeah. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. And this is probably a topic for another show, but you know how you said about being the outsider? We're kind of like the lost generation in that we don't have a home anywhere.
Yeah,
and
nomads.
And you know how you know how it's easy to point the finger and say immigrants don't integrate. And they're all ghettoized and they all live in their own little bubbles and their own little communities. And absolutely in Peterborough, that is the case. Gladstone Street, Cromwell Road until very recently was 95% Asian, Lincoln Road and surrounding areas and so on. And you know how you say you're never made to feel at home anywhere? Well, you are made to feel at home on Lincoln Road. It's true, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of a basic argument to make, but on Lincoln Road, you are surrounded by people who are also first generation, second, third generation immigrants who are not made to feel at home when they go back to, Mirpur or wherever, and they're not made to feel at home when they go out into the world here in the UK. And it's only when you're in your little ghettos where I think other people will understand your background, where you come from and so on. So, yeah, I love this story. I don't know how they got his facial features though. So fair enough.
That's got to be computer generated. And
yeah,
you've gone back and probably look. I mean, firstly, I thought, wow, slightly like a Neanderthal. But then I thought, maybe.
Yeah.
Because you get what I'm saying?
Because we don't believe in that. So are they trying to create the missing link? Let's not have that.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, they would have used, data from previous times. I mean, they had to. I mean, I mean, he looked like a Native American initially when I first looked at him. I was like, oh, what is this? And then I went and looked into it a little bit further. I was like, oh, okay, it's really interesting. But I think what you just said there will be people certainly on the far right thinking, well, how have they come to this? How have they managed to get his skin tone to this and this? And why does he look like this? Why is his nose like that? And I just think they're just nitpicking because it's just been proven scientifically. The first person in Britain had dark skin, blue eyes, amazing blue eyes. I mean, they're very, very, they're striking eyes.
Quite striking on a black man to have blue eyes. It's actually, it's like, wow.
I have never seen that.
So I have, back in university, there was lots and lots of Asian girls who were quite dark who used to wear contacts.
Oh, I see.
So it was always like,
it's contact lens.
Oh my God. They can't be natural. They're natural. No, they're not natural. Yeah, let's be honest. Come on, they're not natural.
Jazakallah khair, brother. Listen, it's been a great show. Thank you very much for your company.
It's been a pleasure.
We're heading towards the end of the show. Up next, we have Friday Night Prime with brother Amir Suleiman and brother Faisal Mahmood. They've got a guest on, I believe. Thanks very much, everybody listening. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Inshallah, we will be back next week. Stay tuned. We're heading towards the adverts, and they have got a great show lined up. Once again, thank you, brother. And
it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hamid, if you are listening, it is true. I was a little bit sad. Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this.